Mavis Gary is a rare and raw portrait of Arrested Development, someone who weaponizes nostalgia and delusion to avoid confronting her own stagnation. This essay explores how young adult flips the redemption arc, presenting a protagonist who doesn't grow in the traditional sense, but instead reveals the emotional cost of clinging to a self-image that peaked in high school. Before Mavis returns to Mercury, Minnesota, we see her drifting through an empty life in Minneapolis. She's divorced, drinking way too much, and ghostwriting a teen book series that's just been canceled. When Mavis receives a birth announcement from her high school ex Buddy Slade, something inside her just unravels. She crashes out. She decides to return to her hometown to reclaim what she believes is rightfully hers, Buddy Slade. When she's back in Mercury, her interactions with the people she left behind are a slow, painful disintegration of the narrative she's crafted about herself. Each encounter is like a mirror that reflects not who she thinks she is, but who she's actually become. Let's start with Buddy. He's kind, accommodating, and he's clearly moved on. He has a wife, a newborn, and a life that has no room for Mavis's fantasies. But Mavis refuses to see it. She reads into every single kind gesture from him. A polite text, a drink at a bar, even a smile. She interprets it as a sign that he's secretly waiting for her. In some rom-coms, this could be the moment that he realizes that she's the one, and when you're first watching this movie, you're wondering maybe that could happen here, but in young adult, it's complete delusion. Then there's Beth, Buddy's wife. She should be Mavis's rival in the story, the boring obstacle standing in the way of the real love story, but Beth is everything Mavis can't quite process. She's warm, funny, confident, loved, and worst of all, she seems really happy. Mavis doesn't know how to compete with that because Beth isn't trying to compete with her. Then there's Matt Freehoff, who's my favorite character in the film. He's the classmate that Mavis barely noticed in high school, but then becomes her accidental confidant. Matt sees right through her. He's not impressed by her beauty or her charm. Their friendship is the most honest one in the film. He's the only one willing to tell her the truth, that Buddy is just not into her, and that she's not some misunderstood heroine. We see that Mavis doesn't just romanticize high school, she clings to it like it's the last time her life made any sense. In her mind, those were the years when she was adored, desired, and most importantly, undisputedly the main character. And rather than acknowledging that those years have passed, she made a whole career and series out of it, and we see that that series is coming to an end. Returning to Mercury looks like one final attempt to get a grasp of her life again. So when she's back in Mercury, she does reconnect with Buddy, but not in the way that she hopes. He's kind, but he's clearly uncomfortable. We see that he's happily married and he's not interested in rekindling anything. So Mavis spends most of her time in Mercury hanging out with Matt, who was the least popular guy in school. I just love how she was the most popular, he was the least, and they're the ones that actually end up forming the most honest bond together. It's pretty apparent that Buddy does feel sorry for Mavis the night that they do hang out. He invites her to Beth's show, not out of interest, but out of pity. Later that night, Mavis does drive him home because he's pretty drunk, and she corners him and kisses him. It's kind of crazy that Buddy does invite Mavis to his baby's naming ceremony, but we later learn that it's Beth that feels sorry for Mavis and basically forces him to do it. At this party, Mavis does throw herself at Buddy again, this time very blatantly asking him to run away with her. Buddy does shut this down and tells her to leave, but she doesn't. When Beth accidentally spills sangria all over Mavis's dress, she has a complete meltdown. She announces her intentions to win Buddy back, not in front of just Beth, but the entire party. But during the speech, you can't help but feel sorry for her. We learn that she had Buddy's miscarriage, and she clearly had had a lot of PTSD from that. When she leaves the party, she goes straight to Matt's house and reveals how she feels like she's crazy and how she feels like no one loves her. And we as an audience are hoping that at this point she kind of realizes what she's doing and how absurd all of this was, and we want her to wake up and just kind of head back and wake up and grow up already, you know? But instead, the next morning she has a quiet heart-to-heart with Matt's sister Sandra, and Sandra is one of those girls that was always looking up to Mavis, and she tells her how she's better than this town. Mavis doesn't disagree. She clings to that, and it's the tiniest scrap of affirmation, and she grabs onto it like it's a life raft. It's all she needs to repackage her humiliation into something empowering, and that this wasn't a collapse, it was just a detour, not a failure, and she just doesn't belong there in Mercury and she needs to go back to Minneapolis. It's such a frustrating moment, but that's kind of what makes Mavis such a real character, because in life people don't always just change. Sometimes they take the most brutal signs from the universe and twist them into justifications, not because they're evil, but because they're protecting a version of themselves that they're not ready to let go of. Mavis's lack of growth is its own kind of statement. It's Diablo Cody and Jason Reitman saying, "We don't owe you a transformation just because you're uncomfortable." Some people leave the story right where they started. That doesn't make the story meaningless, it makes it honest. And in that honesty, in that refusal to give us a clean arc, Mavis Gary becomes something rarer than a likable heroine. She becomes unforgettable. Charlize Theron's performance as Mavis Gary is absolutely incredible. She's often praised for de-glamming her roles like Monster, but Young Adult is different. Here she's still beautiful, but the way she inhabits that beauty is unsettling. Mavis doesn't use her looks to feel good about herself, she uses them to hide the rot underneath, and Theron lets us see the cracks without ever asking us to feel sorry for her. I love the scenes where she's getting ready, where she's getting her hair done, her nails done, doing her facials. She's basically spending the entire day getting ready, putting so much effort into how she looks. These scenes are quiet, repetitive, and they're slightly grotesque. Theron plays Mavis like someone who's constantly performing for an invisible audience. She flashes charm like a weapon, but it never quite lands. Her smiles don't reach her eyes. There's a tension in her body, like she's trying to hold herself together with willpower alone. What's remarkable is how she never begs for empathy. She never tries to soften Mavis for the audience. She embraces her character's ugliness. She lets her be cruel, petty, desperate, and in doing so, she gives us something we rarely get in a female character, a portrait of failure without redemption. Young Adult doesn't end with a breakthrough. There's no tearful apology, no montage of personal growth, no epiphany that neatly ties Mavis's story together. Instead, it ends with the woman packing up her bags, brushing off her humiliation, and driving away, convinced that she's still the main character in a story everyone else has stopped reading. It's a deeply unsatisfying ending if you're expecting redemption, but that's the point. This film asks a quiet, uncomfortable question. What if some people don't grow? What if moving on isn't a natural, inevitable part of adulthood, but a choice that not everyone is ready or willing to make? Mavis chooses not to change, and in that choice, there's something hauntingly real. She doesn't become a better person, she becomes a more deeply entrenched version of the person she already was. So, is she liberated, or is she just lost? The answer might be both. Thanks so much for listening. I really wanted to do an essay on Young Adult because I hadn't seen any on YouTube. If you liked this, please go ahead and give it a like and a subscribe. If there's anything that you wanted to say, please go ahead and leave a comment. And hopefully I'll see you again in another essay soon. Bye guys.